The airport lights blurred into a dull glow as the departure board flipped from on time to gate closed, and in that single moment, Daniel Carter felt his entire life slip a few inches further out of reach. He stood frozen with his phone in his hand, his carry-on at his feet, his chest tight not just because he had missed the flight, but because missing this one meant disappointing his daughter again. Rain streaked down the glass walls of the terminal, mirroring the quiet defeat settling inside him, and he had no idea that this small, cruel delay was about to lead him into the most unexpected turn his life would ever take. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that one good decision can change more than one life, take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us what humanity still looks like. Daniel was a single father who lived his life in careful calculations. Every hour mattered, every dollar was counted twice, and every promise he made to his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, was carved deep into his sense of self. Her mother had passed away 3 years earlier, leaving Daniel to balance grief, parenthood, and a job that barely paid enough but demanded everything he had. This flight was supposed to take him to a final interview for a better position in another city, a chance to finally give Lily a safer neighborhood, a better school, and a father who wasn't always exhausted. Missing it felt like the universe confirming what he secretly feared, that no matter how hard he tried, he was always one step behind. He left the airport hours later, rain still falling hard, the kind that soaked through jackets and seemed to wash color out of the world. His old sedan waited in the parking lot, dented on one side, coughing when it started, but reliable in the way old things often are. That car was more than transportation, it was how he got Lily to school, how he got to work, how he kept their fragile routine from collapsing. As he drove away, anger and disappointment churned inside him, not loud or explosive, but heavy and constant, like a weight pressing down on his chest. Traffic slowed near an underpass, red brake lights glowing against wet asphalt. That was when Daniel noticed her. A woman stood on the sidewalk, soaked to the bone, holding a cardboard sign that sagged from the rain. She was wrapped in a thin coat that offered little protection, her hair plastered to her face, her shoulders hunched not just from cold but from something deeper, something like resignation. Daniel would have driven past her like he had so many others, telling himself he couldn't afford to help, that he had his own problems, his own child to think about. His foot hovered over the accelerator, his mind already forming excuses. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the memory of Lily asking why some people slept outside. Maybe it was the raw exhaustion of a day that had already taken so much from him. Or maybe it was simply the look in that woman's eyes, not pleading, not dramatic, just tired in a way that felt painfully familiar. Daniel pulled over without fully understanding why, rain splashing up onto his windshield as he rolled to a stop. The woman approached cautiously, as if expecting the car to drive off at any second. Daniel felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he realized how little he could really offer. He didn't have cash to spare, barely enough in his account to last until the next paycheck. What he did have was a car, and the sudden, terrifying thought crossed his mind before he could push it away. He imagined Lily's face if he failed her again, imagined the long bus rides, the extra hours lost. His heart pounded as he weighed logic against something far more dangerous, compassion. He made the decision in a rush, the kind that feels reckless until it's already done. Daniel handed over his car keys and pointed toward a nearby shelter he knew of, one that was notoriously hard to reach on foot, especially in weather like this. He told himself he was doing the right thing, that he could figure out the rest later, that maybe this was a test of the person he still wanted to be. The woman stared at the keys as if they might disappear, disbelief etched across her face. She climbed into the driver's seat slowly, like someone stepping into a dream they were afraid to wake from. And then she was gone, taillights vanishing into the rain. Daniel stood there under the overpass, soaked and shaking, the reality of what he had just done crashing down on him. He had no car, no clear plan for getting home, and a daughter waiting. Regret tried to claw its way up his throat, whispering that kindness was a luxury he couldn't afford. He started walking, shoes squelching with each step, replaying the moment over and over, wondering if he had just made the worst mistake of his life. The walk home took hours. By the time Daniel reached his small apartment, his clothes were heavy with water and his body ached with exhaustion. Lily was already asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, a movie paused halfway through on the screen. He carried her to bed, brushing damp hair from her forehead, his heart breaking at how peaceful she looked, unaware of how close her world always was to unraveling. That night, Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling, calculating impossible scenarios, wondering how he would explain the missing car, the missed interview, the mounting disappointments. The next morning brought no miracle, only the harsh clarity of daylight. Daniel borrowed a neighbor's phone to call in late to work, his voice tight as he tried to sound normal. He spent the day walking, filling out forms for public transport passes, making mental notes of bus routes and schedules that would stretch his already thin days even thinner. Each step felt heavier than the last, and yet, beneath the fear and stress, there was a strange calm, a quiet sense that something had been set in motion, something he couldn't yet see. 3 days passed with no sign of the car. Daniel stopped hoping for its return, forcing himself to accept that some good deeds simply ended in loss. On the 4th day, a knock came at his door just as the sun was setting. He opened it slowly, bracing himself for bad news, only to find a woman standing there, dry, clean, and standing a little taller than he remembered. Behind her, parked at the curb, was his old sedan. She looked different, not because her circumstances had magically changed, but because something in her posture had shifted. She held out the keys with both hands, her eyes shining with something that made Daniel's throat tighten. He stepped aside as she explained, in halting, emotional bursts, how the car had allowed her to reach the shelter in time, how the staff there recognized her name, how she had once worked as a nurse before a series of losses had pulled her life apart. With the shelter's help, she had been connected to a temporary housing program and a rehabilitation counselor. The car wasn't just transportation, it was the bridge she needed to step back into a life she thought was gone forever. But that wasn't all. While at the shelter, she overheard someone talking about a company hiring urgently, a company Daniel had interviewed with years ago before life had derailed him. She remembered his story, his daughter, his missed flight. She had made calls on his behalf, using old contacts she never thought she'd need again. That interview he had missed had been rescheduled, quietly, because someone had vouched for his character in a way no resume ever could. Daniel felt his knees weaken as the weight of her words sank in. All the fear, the regret, the sleepless nights seemed to rush out of him at once, replaced by something warm and overwhelming. He realized then that kindness wasn't a transaction with guaranteed returns, but sometimes, just sometimes, it rippled outward in ways that defied logic. The following weeks unfolded like a cautious dream. Daniel attended the rescheduled interview and landed the job, one that paid enough to finally breathe, enough to plan for a future instead of just surviving the present. Lily noticed the change before he said anything, the way her father smiled more, the way the tension in his shoulders eased. He told her, in simple terms, about helping someone and being helped in return, watching her eyes widen with the kind of understanding only children seem to grasp effortlessly. The woman, whose life Daniel had briefly intersected with, continued rebuilding her own path. They didn't become inseparable, didn't turn into some dramatic, perfect ending, but they stayed connected in quiet, meaningful ways, reminders to each other of how close either of them had come to giving up. Daniel often thought back to that rainy night under the overpass, to how easily he could have driven past, how different everything would be if he had listened to his fear instead of his heart. As time went on, Daniel began to understand that missing that flight wasn't a failure but a redirection. The disappointment that had once crushed him became the doorway to a deeper lesson about trust, sacrifice, and the invisible threads that connect strangers. He learned that being a good father wasn't just about providing materially, but about modeling compassion even when it felt risky, even when it came at a personal cost. If this story has touched your heart even a little, if it's reminded you of a moment when kindness changed your path or someone else's, please take a moment now to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel so these stories can keep reaching those who need them most. And just before this story ends, here's a special request for you. Comment below and tell us what you would have done in Daniel's place, because your perspective might inspire someone reading it today. Daniel still drives the same old car, dents and all, but every time he turns the key, he's reminded that some losses aren't losses at all. Sometimes, they're the quiet beginning of a story far bigger than the one we thought we were living, a story where one missed flight leads to a life finally taking off.